just kind of want to give a shout out to those NIMBYs for really sticking to it. This is the most relentless group I've ever seen. Thousands of dollars, a dedicated website, legal funds, 6-year court battle.
Yeah.
I mean, they really went for it, but in the end, Loves kind of came out on top of, with this one at least,
Thanks, Mark, and hello, Tyson. Good to have you as always.
Happy to be back.
Happy to have you. We're going to start in Arizona here, which recently announced an effort to make things a bit easier for truckers traveling along Interstate 10. Not necessarily in the form of new parking, Tyson, although we'll talk about that effort here in just a moment. But this one is in the form of information.
Yeah, so in January, the Arizona Department of Transportation launched its truck parking availability system. That's those electronic signs that tell truck drivers, how many parking spaces are at rest areas and up the road ahead. So these signs are along Interstate 10 in western and southeastern Arizona, I believe.
Yep.
So that information, so that's been around since January, those signs. The news is that information is now available on Arizona's traveler information website, which is azz511.gov. So truckers can access that real-time parking information pretty much anywhere. And so let's say that you stopped at a truck stop to refuel, but there's no truck parking spaces, and you can go to that website on your phone to see if there's any parking at, any nearby rest areas, as opposed to, having to actually physically drive on that interstate and wait to find the signs. You can do it anywhere now. So it's a good convenience, so it's nice to have that information wherever possible. So, but, I know people get kind of, roll their eyes when we talk about these signs, but it's also worth noting that this is part of a bigger plan in Arizona to improve truck parking in the state. So the DOT has proposed, I think it was more than 800 additional truck parking throughout the state. That includes expanding capacity at rest areas, as well as plans for 3 new lots for truck parking specifically. So I know they've already expanded truck parking at 2 rest areas since I think 2019. So they've been doing the work. So this availability system, again, it isn't what truckers like to hear, but I think Arizona needs the credit it deserves, which is they have plans to expand parking, which they've been doing for the past few years.
Yeah.
They plan on to continue doing that for the foreseeable future to reach that target of 800 more truck parking spaces.
Yeah, and if it was just that one aspect, the trucking, the availability system, we might say, okay, that's nice, but what are we really doing here? However, as you point out, this is part of a bigger plan, and they're actually doing something here, and they're actually putting new spaces in. So when you factor that in with the availability system and the more information, it really does paint a good picture of what they're doing there, and they seem to understand what the issue is and are putting their money where their mouth is, I guess, so to speak.
Absolutely,
so, kudos to Arizona there. We've talked about this before. The truck parking availability systems have roots actually in other states as well. And we've talked about other states that are kind of implementing this, which, again, it does help. Information is power and whatnot. But Tennessee, for instance, just got some money from the federal government for that very purpose, and they're following that down the road, right?
Yeah, so the U.S. Department of Transportation, they recently handed out more than $3 billion with a B in federal infrastructure grants. Of the 180 grants that were awarded, there were few trucking-related projects, but there was one dealing with truck parking, as you mentioned. So that's the good news is that is the good news. The bad news is, if you want to look at it that way, is that grant is for $2 million for that truck parking availability system in Tennessee. Basically, similar to the one we just talked about in Arizona. 8 Midwestern states have already done so in the past. I think they started that around 2015. So this is now being expanded to Tennessee. I don't mind the availability systems as a supplement for a broader efforts to expand truck parking capacity. As far as I know, I don't know of any near future plans to add public parking in Tennessee, but these things they come slowly, unfortunately. These systems, I think they should be seen kind of as a short-term, maybe Band-Aid for the parking problem. So, what they do is it allows to maximize the usage of available parking, because oftentimes these public parking spaces at rest areas, they go unused because a lot of truckers just assume there's not going to be any parking there because that's usually the case.
Yeah.
And so they'll just drive on by and there might be a space or two that's unoccupied. These signs make sure that every single spot is used to its maximum potential, particularly in the evening and night hours where overnight parking is pretty much peak parking hours.
Yeah, and again, certainly helpful, and I'm not going to knock it because it does help people out there, as you pointed out, for that very reason. Would be nice to see some of that money, too, go toward new truck parking as well, though. I know we don't live in a perfect world, but again, we'll take what we can get, but it would be nice to see more of that here, and hopefully we will, and maybe the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act will be
there you go.
passed into law here at some point in the near future. Let's shift gears here and talk about the Southeast a bit, and any trucker who does their work there is probably going to have an opinion on the situation in and around Atlanta. It is a mess. Traffic-wise, I'm not breaking any news there. Something that is not lost, though, on city leaders who are taking a look at this issue now. And to their credit, they're trying to do something about it. And expansion of truck parking is apparently part of the plan, Tyson.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Atlanta, a bit of a mess might be an understatement there.
Yep.
But let's highlight some of that real quick. So Atlanta, yes, one of the largest freight hubs in the country, and the metro area's infrastructure, I think we can say, is kind of ill-equipped to deal with that truck traffic. The American Transportation Research Institute's top 100 truck bottlenecks, Atlanta has 3 of the top 10.
Congratulations, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
With 6 more further down the list, so a total of 9 on that list. Freight is expected to double by 2050, so which can cause a pretty chaotic situation in Atlanta if the infrastructure in and around Atlanta isn't greatly improved. So. When it comes to truck parking, there's a pair of rest areas about an hour north on I-75, and then there's another pair about an hour east on I-20. So definitely there's no public truck parking in that urban core, and certainly not in the immediate suburban areas, and that's kind of like where there's a need. That being said, the Atlanta Regional Commission is trying to address exactly that. So we have, MPOs, metropolitan, planning organizations.
Yep.
This is a more regional one, so the entire Atlanta area. In December, the commission created a zoning and ordinance guidance for local and county governments, which is basically it's literally a draft document that any local government can just copy and paste and try to pass in their respective jurisdictions. So already laying down the groundwork for the government side of that. But at the state level, I know Governor Brian Kemp, he signed a bill into law last year that directs the state to create which is a statewide freight and logistics implementation plan. That's a 20-year plan with annual updates to state lawmakers on critical projects, which includes truck parking. So you combine this Atlanta Regional Commission with what the state is already implemented. And so what hopefully we can see in the not too distant future is a massive improvement in the truck parking situation in Atlanta and that entire region around Atlanta. So just wanted to kind of highlight that, it sucks over there, but there is a lot of work that's being done right now at both the state and the local and regional level. Yeah,
and a shout out to Georgia and Atlanta by extension here too. They've been really looking at a lot of issues that matter to truck drivers. I think about a month ago, the governor signed a tort reform bill into law. They're taking a look at this truck parking issue and the freight mobility issue there. So kudos to them. While we're pointing out the bad things, which we often do, we should also point out the people who are taking a look at these issues and trying to do something about them. So kudos to them there. I don't know how to pivot to this. On the other side of things, we talk about the mess in Atlanta. There's a mess in New York City as well, not always friendly to truck drivers. We've talked about the congestion tolling plan with you many times before. We could talk about that for a lifetime. But we also talk from time to time about the city's crackdown on truck parking, which is showing no signs of slowing down.
No, the NYPD's 112th precinct, which is basically Queens, they continue to brag about towing, booting, and slapping barnacles on parked trucks. And barnacles are those big things that they slap on the windshield that you can't remove.
Yep.
Anyway, I mean, granted, these trucks are parked illegally, but that's because they have nowhere to go. If they don't choose to park there, they wouldn't park there if they didn't have to. That's the bad news, that the enforcement is still there's a crackdown on illegal parking. The good news is that New York City Council member Natasha Williams, who represents Southeast Queens, last year she introduced a bill that would require the city's DOT to establish overnight truck parking in industrial business zones. So that's basically parking from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. for trucks only, specifically for trucks. And so at the city council level, they see the problem. They recognize the problem, and at least one council member is trying to do something about it. And so, testimony was provided by the Trucking Association of New York about, obviously in support of this bill. But they pointed out that there are 3 official truck parking facilities in New York City.
That's crazy.
As of last, it is.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about how large of a city. That's crazy for any large city.
Yeah.
Let alone one of the largest cities in the world.
Yeah.
To have only 3. And so, again, this, Natasha Williams, I've seen her name been thrown out there a lot when it comes to having the truck parking conversation in New York City. So she's trying to do something about it. That was introduced, I believe, last February, but as recently as just last month in April, it got moved to the city's transportation committee. So now there's actual movement of this bill. And so hopefully we can get this out the door and really address, 3 parking facilities.
That ain't going to cut it.
No, not at all.
And that's the thing, too, with New York City, as you know, space is limited, so I understand the challenge there. But as you point out, these folks wouldn't be parking there if they had another option. Finding that other option and making that other option available, obviously, is a bit easier said than done. But encouraging that the issue is being taken up there in the city council. And if you do business there, if you work there, if you live there, I would encourage you to reach out to your council members there and explain to them, what a mess this is and why you're in the situation that you are. Let's shift gears here real quick. We don't have a whole lot of time, Tyson, but did want to ask you about a upcoming new Love's location in Joliet, Illinois. This has been in the planning stages for years now. This is a tale as old as time about NIMBYism and other things, but it's finally happening.
I can finally put this one to rest here pretty soon. This is a Love's travel stop in Joliet, Illinois. I first reported on this back in 2018 when the city council approved of the project with a 6-3 vote. So, pretty strong vote there. In the years since, the NIMBYs have been absolutely relentless on trying to stop this. They've raised thousands of dollars for a legal fund to challenge this truck stop in the courtroom. They were able to successfully stop the construction of this. Again, it was 2025. This was approved in 2018, so they did a good job of doing that. But last year the county court basically ruled in favor of the developer, saying you can move forward, and so now here we are. Just kind of want to give a shout out to those NIMBYs for really sticking to it. This is the most relentless group I've ever seen. Thousands of dollars, a dedicated website, legal funds, 6-year court battle.
Yeah.
They really went for it, But in the end, Love's kind of came out on top of, with this one at least, not always the case, but there was a strong the local ordinances was there, legally it was kind of hard to block this, and I think they kind of understood that. But hey, they stuck their ground, but 6 years later, we're finally going to get a Love's there.
A semi-sarcastic shout-out from Tyson Fisher. We'll leave it there. You can check out Tyson's outstanding work on the truck parking crisis and a number of other truck parking-related topics on our website, landline.media, and in every issue of Landline Magazine. Tyson, thanks as always.
Thanks for having me.
We'll step out for a quick break, but don't go too far because Landline Now returns here in just a moment.